The UN Security Council is the highest global peace and decision-making body with 15 members, 5 permanent members, including China, France, Russian Federation, the United Kingdom, and the United States. 10 non-permanent members elected for a 2-year term by the General Assembly. Even though Africa has 54 countries, the continent only has 3 elected members out of a total of 10 non-permanent seats, with no representation in the permanent category. Many African leaders have been advocating for reforms of the UN Security Council. Africa, with the largest regional group in the United Nations and having 28% membership, President Biya re-echoed that the continent deserves to be represented.
Africa, glaringly, stands alone as the only region without permanent representation within the Security Council and is conspicuously unrepresented in its non-permanent category. The United Nations security remains trapped in the era of 1945, when much of Africa was still in the regrettable grip of colonialism. We must not allow this colonial ethos to persist 3/4 of a century later. Africa demands for 2 permanent seats, complete with commensurate rights, including the veto, is maintained, if maintained, and 5 non-permanent seats are issues of equity, justice, and our right to have an equal say in the decision-making on issues that affect the African region.
For the organ to be more relevant, it must be inclusive. Responding to my question on the need for Africa's representation for more inclusion in the permanent category of the UN Security Council, Assistant Secretary, Bureau of African Affairs, Molly Fee, in a briefing with 14 African journalists representing their countries in the 2023 U.S. Foreign Press Reporting Tour in Washington, D.C., reaffirms the United States' continued support to Africa's bid for permanent seats in the Council.
As announced by President Biden during the Africa Leaders Summit, as the United States supports a permanent seat for Africa on the Security Council. As you know, there are what we refer to as the A3. There are 3 African members who at any given time are part of the 10 elected member seats. But we believe, just as you said, for all the reasons you've outlined, that it's important that Africa have a permanent seat, and we are supporting that in the discussions about how to reform the Security Council.
African issues composed of over 50% of the UN Security Council discussions, and verdicts are being made that affect the continent, with no representation at the highest international peace and security decision-making body. However, Africa needs to be united to have a stronger voice that will influence the United Nations. Salifu Cherno Kamara, AYV News.